All right, so let's get started with our Unit 3 review. So the Unit 3 exam is coming at you in January, so we have to do this review, going over all of the chapters that we read about the last few weeks. All right, so Unit 3 is the post-classical era, going from 600 CE all the way to 1450. There's three major kind of like categories. During this time period, we're looking at trade networks expanding. We're looking at the continuity of the classical era, like when it comes to empires and new empires and states that are formed. And we're also going to see the increased production capacity of economies. All right, so let's start with the first major category. We're looking at trade networks. There's a whole bunch of new trade networks and cities that we need to talk about. So trade is going to create a whole bunch of new cities, right? And there's going to be a whole bunch of growth of the trade networks. So the Silk Roads are going to expand, the Mediterranean is going to expand, the Trans-Saharan is going to expand, and of course the Indian Ocean. And wherever these trade networks are, we're going to see cities are going to be formed. So for example, in Northern Europe, where like we have the Hanseatic League, we're going to see Novgorod, which is in Russia. In West Africa, along the Trans-Sahara, we're going to have Timbuktu. In the Indian Ocean, where we have the Swahili city-states of East Africa, those are going to form there. Calicut in India, Baghdad, right? These are all major cities, and they're all formed. The kind of two odd ones out are going to be Tenochtitlan, which is in Mexico, and Cahokia in North America, or the United States. And these are unique because they're not part of the Afro-Eurasia trade networks. They're the ones in the Americas, and these are the largest cities in the Americas. When it comes to the American trade networks, we're going to see that the Aztecs and the Incas, they're going to trade. Aztecs are going to trade a lot more than the Incas will. And they're going to trade luxury goods. And compared to the Afro-Eurasian trade networks, the ones in the Americas are going to be very, very tiny, very small scale, very minimal amount. And again, they don't have the vehicles and they don't have the animals to transport more goods. Now we're also going to see luxury goods is going to be the driving force for the expansion of trade. All right, because wealthy people, the nobles of the upper class of every society, is going to have great demand for luxury goods, and therefore they're willing to spend the money to acquire them. And in order to acquire them, we're going to see the development of new technologies and new ideas of how to transport or how to organize trade in order to make it easier, make it more possible. So we see that, for example, the caravanserai, and these are like the large kind of like hotels for entire caravans of animals and merchants. Those are going to be set up along the Silk Road. We see the new technologies like the camel saddle in Trans-Sahara. We see the maritime technologies in the Indian Ocean. We see new ideas about trade and banking and the economy, stuff like with offering credit, right? You borrow money and then you have to pay it back with interest. Ideas from China like the paper money or the flying cash, and also banking, right? These are all new ideas that are invented during this time, right? Where you could deposit money in one place and withdraw it somewhere else. So silk and spices, cloth like cotton. These are always in gold and silver jewelry. Right? Those are always going to be those luxury goods. Here we see a picture of a caravanserai, and again, these are like large hotels that can accommodate dozens and dozens of animals and merchants. Banking is going to increase. It's going to be founded during this time, and we're going to see checks being part of like the exchange of goods. So not only are merchants kind of coming up with these new methods and ideas of how to trade, we're also going to see that the states themselves, the governments themselves, are going to take a more active role in developing trade as well. So, for example, in China, they're going to be we're going to say that they're going to be the first ones to print money, and the Chinese government is going to print money in order to control inflation, because they don't want to print too much money, because then the value of the currency would drop. We see that almost every state is going to have some type of standardized coinage system, right? Currency. We see trade organizations, right, like the Hansa, right, where the different cities of Northern Europe come into this agreement to trade with each other. We see infrastructure, right? So like the Incas built their roads, the Mongols control the Silk Road, and we see that in China they have the Sui dynasty, they built the Grand Canal, right? So by investing money and resources in their infrastructure, in the roads and their canals and bridges, it allows for easier trade. And again, these are the governments taking an active role in growing the economy. So here we see a picture of the Hanseatic League, right? Novgorod, that Russian city, is out in the northernmost part. So we see all these different cities. Remember, they are trading with each other, and this is kind of like the beginning of that trade that the Europeans are going to start doing. And not only are they going to trade with each other, eventually they're going to start trading with the rest of the world. So here we see a picture of the Grand Canal, right? Connecting northern and southern China. Is one of the largest and most important achievements of the Sui dynasty. So we see that new empires are going to be formed, and these empires are going to draw a lot of inspiration or a lot of their knowledge about how to run a government from previous empires. So for example, the Sui, Tang, and Song dynasties of China, they're going to look back at their history with the Qin and the Han dynasties, right, which are the classical era dynasties. The Byzantine Empire and the Islamic Caliphate, they're going to be looking back at the Romans for their kind of organization. The Islamic Empire, the Caliphate, is also going to look at the Persian Empire to see how they ran things. The Sultanate of Delhi is going to kind of borrow ideas of how to govern from the Guptas, which is the decentralized empire of India during the late classical era. So a lot of these empires that we mentioned in the post-classical era, a lot of them are going to borrow ideas from the previous generation of empires, right, from the classical era. But there's some that are going to be completely brand new, and these would be the Mongol Empire and the empires of West Africa, including Ghana and Mali. Now, the movement of people is going to change a lot of things, and we're going to see how the environment leads people to develop technologies and ideas in order to adapt to the environment. So, for example, the Vikings are famous because of their longboats, right? And these longboats, because they live in a water area in northern Europe. The Vikings need to be able to not only transport goods across the sea, but also transport goods, up and down rivers. So they're going to develop technology to build these longboats that allows them to travel across the oceans and travel up and down rivers. We're going to see how the Arabs in Arabia and the Berbers of North Africa, they're going to use the camels, right? And they're going to develop the camel saddle that allows them to ride or pack their animals, pack the camels even better. And of course they need this because they're living in the desert, right? So that their environment is forcing them to develop these technologies. And of course the Central Asian people, they're going to be developing, the saddle, the stirrups, right? All these things that they need to ride horses. So Vikings, the camels, and the horses, right? So based on what is available, based on their environment, based on their surroundings, we see how they're going to develop technology in order to keep running or keep operating. Migrations, when people are moving around, they tend to impact their environment. There's two major examples during this time period. The Bantus is going to be the first one. Remember the Bantus, they start migrating from kind of like the central and west part of Africa. They're going to start migrating from Central West Africa across Southern Africa, across Central Africa, across East Africa, and they're looking to settle new places because they had kind of grown too large for their resources. They have had too much overpopulation. And as they spread, they're going to spread technology, right? They spread the use of iron. They're going to spread farming, agriculture, economy. They're going to spread, of course, their language. And in fact, most of the people of sub-Saharan Africa, even today, they speak a descendant language of the original Bantu language. Now, the same kind of thing is going to happen in Oceania, right, with the Polynesians, or sometimes they're called Austronesians, right? They come from Southeast Asia originally, and they're going to sail using boats, using ships, canoes, I should say. They're going to sail, from island to island, and every time the population grew too big for the resources of one island, they're going to move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. But in doing so, they're going to they're going to take their animals with them, animals like pigs and chickens, and of course they're going to bring their language. So a lot of these people, these Austronesian, Polynesian people, they're going to have, just like the Bantu people, they're going to spread their language, and a lot of the people in these areas of the world, these islands around the world, their languages are descendants of that Polynesian mother language. Now, so again, languages are going to diffuse because of migration, but also because of trade. So the Bantus are going to, when the Bantu people of East Africa, when they start coming into trade contact with Arabs, we're going to see the formation of Swahili, right, which is a mix of Bantu and Arabic. We're going to see a lot of Turkic languages spreading throughout the Middle East as the Turkic people are going to migrate across the Middle East and settle there over hundreds and hundreds of years. We see Urdu develop in northern India because all these Turkic and Muslim people migrating into northern India, they're going to bring their languages and they're going to combine into Urdu. And we also see this kind of influence of language in the sense that Arabic is going to be heavily influencing of Spanish, and that is because Spain, of course, or Andalus as it was called back then, was under Muslim control for about 700 years. So migrations and commercial contact will lead to new languages. All right, Islam, of course, is going to be the most important world religion during this time because it's the only world religion that starts in the post-classical era. The other world religions like Buddhism and Hinduism, Confucianism, Christianity, all of those came during the classical era. So we see that Islam is going to form in the Arabian Peninsula, modern-day Arabia, of course, or Saudi Arabia. And they're going to, this religion, of course, is an offshoot, it's a continuation of sort, and influenced by the monotheistic religions, including Judaism, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism. And we know that this religion, this dominant religion, is going to spread sometimes through war, sometimes through trade, sometimes through missionaries. So from the Middle East, it's going to go into North Africa. From North Africa, it's going to go into sub-Saharan Africa and into Spain or Southern Europe. It's going to go into India or South Asia. It's going to go to Central Asia, right, where the Mongols live, and even to Southeast Asia, where we see the city of Malacca, modern-day Indonesia. So with the expansion of trade, we see the formation of diasporic communities. Remember, a diaspora is when people leave their homelands to go far away and settle in faraway places. Sometimes they leave their homeland because they're forced, like Jewish people had been forced to flee their homeland in Jerusalem, and they were spread out across the Mediterranean, mainly in Europe. But other times these people choose to go So a lot of merchants, Islamic merchants or Arabic merchants, they're going to leave Arabia. They're going to, settle in India, settle in East Africa, settle in Southeast Asia, and wherever they go, they're going to, live together. They're going to marry into the local population. They're going to blend into the local population, and they're going to introduce their culture to the local culture. So we see that the Muslims are going to have living in these port cities all over the Indian Ocean. We're going to see that Jewish communities are going to be found all over the Mediterranean. We're going to see a lot of Chinese in Southeast Asia. And so again, wherever they go, they're going to keep their traditions, or they're going to maintain their traditions, but they're also going to, in many cases, introduce their traditions to the new population. So that's where we see the birth of a lot of, and the spread of a lot of Islam, particularly. As remember, Islam is what we call a universal religion, or a proselytizing religion, in which that they want to spread the faith to other parts of the world. And we get in trouble.
Come to the village and take everything.